Sometimes I think back on my life and I'm amazed to remember the sheer number of times I've randomly come across a book while looking for another book. And why is that? Am I just incredibly lucky? Is my mind making me believe that this thing that I accidentally stumbled upon is important? Serendipity is hard to describe because it sits somewhere between magic and reality, faith and fact, luck and belief. Today, I've partnered with HP to try my best to describe to you how a series of serendipitous and seemingly random encounters have led to my thesis project. I was gonna call this video How I Use Serendipity in My Thesis Project, but it was just wrong. I didn't really use serendipity. Serendipity happened to me. There's a quote by John Barth from the book The Last Voyage of Somebody the Sailor. You don't reach serendip by plotting a course for it. You have to set out in good faith or elsewhere and lose your bearings serendipitously. Serendipity is built on happy accidents, but what makes serendipity unique, different from the million other daily encounters that you forget about, is that the accident is meaningful to you in some way. And all we can do is plant the seeds for those happy accidents to occur. When I started my master's, I had no idea what I wanted to write my thesis about, but there was a reading that we were given that really set out my philosophy and approach towards my thesis. And it was an essay called 1,000 Plateaus by Deleuze and Guattari. Our Western model for knowledge and society is based on a tree structure, which have a seed, a root, and branches and leaves that are all traceable back to the origin. A rhizome is a plant structure that grows horizontally and vertically in all directions. When rhizomes are separated, each piece can become a new plant. A rhizome doesn't have a central point or a particular origin. And for Deleuze and Guattari, the rhizome is the model for the postmodern world because it describes research and thinking that allows for multiple non-hierarchical entry and exit points. The internet would be a great example of this. It doesn't really have a point of origin, and nothing can really control or shape it or organize it. Its only rule is that it grows. You can take out any link or any website without really damaging or changing the internet. It just exists. This kind of set the tone for our thesis here. Just general confusion. An architectural thesis is an independent design research on a topic selected by the student. The student can explore issues that he or she has personal interest in, and it's also an opportunity to identify and elaborate on a position within the field of architecture. And for most people, it's the final test, the culmination of their architectural studies in the formal education system. Some people have a pretty good idea of what they want to focus on, but I started my thesis year pretty clueless and confused, and without any vague idea of what direction I wanted to go in. My master's was split into 2 years. The first was designed to explore all the different avenues we could delve into and exploring the different methods of conducting research and methods of communicating our ideas. And in the second year, we narrowed down on a topic, and we were kind of swallowed by this black hole called design research. And I'm gonna walk you through the 7 projects that I did in my first year, which all eventually led to my thesis topic. So our very first assignment was all about learning about thousands of different perspectives in the architectural discourse and seeing which ones pulled our interest and starting to explore different methods of representing our ideas. And this was the year of the Chicago Biennial. We were to pick 3 firms that were participating and try to synthesize their work and try to create some connection between their work through a medium of our choice. This was in preparation for our actual trip to Chicago, where we would see the works in person. So for me, and for someone as indecisive as me, this felt like a monumental challenge. And I mean, there's so many interesting firms out there, and like, well, how do I know what I'm interested in? And what if I pick the wrong firms? Does that mean I'm gonna pick the wrong thesis topic? But in the interest of deadlines and the fear of failing, I forced myself to pick 3 that kind of piqued my interest. And I'm not going to dwell on any specific ideas or firms for the sake of time of this video, but feel free to pause the video if you want to read a more in-depth description. So the 3 firms were Liam Young, Studio Detail, and Ai Weiwei. The project, you could pick any medium you wanted to. And for my project, I decided to make a short video. So that week, I opened up Premiere for the very first time. I tried to learn the program while at the same time trying to make a project. So after 3 days of pure frustration, this is what I produced. When you think of the romantic image of an architect, you think of them drawing day and night on their drafting board, coming up with these brilliant ideas. But in reality, a huge chunk of our time is actually spent looking at books, magazines, and the internet for inspiration. And that leads to a message from today's sponsor, HP. A mouse is only a tool, but it is such an essential tool for the modern day creative because it really, really is an extension of your hand. HP's new 930 Creator wireless mouse is a customizable mouse for architects or creative professionals. And it has 7 reprogrammable buttons that you can set up shortcuts to, and I've been really loving this mouse so far because it's compatible with a lot of the softwares that I use, like SketchUp, Photoshop, and of course Chrome for when I'm scouring through the internet for ideas. It might not seem like a lot, but those few extra seconds that I save with the shortcuts, those seconds really add up and add efficiency to my workflow. It connects to Bluetooth pretty seamlessly, wirelessly, and it allows you to connect to multiple devices across Mac OS and PC by just clicking this button. The battery life on this thing is insanely good. A full charge can last up to 12 weeks. And actually, since I got it a couple months ago, I actually haven't had to charge it even once. Chicago. If there was one word to describe the city, it would be grand. It is the birthplace of the skyscrapers and the home of the greats. Over the time span of a week, we explore Chicago and we tour the main architectural gems like the Roby House, the Farnsworth House, and the Crown Hall by the one and only Mies van der Rohe. The topic of this 2015 Chicago Biennial was the state of the art in architecture. And architects were invited to share their approach and their research interests on some of the most pressing topics. Then I came across the work of Briony Roberts Studio. Their project was a site-specific installation in collaboration with the South Shore drill team. The drill routines responded to the geometry and order of Mies van der Rohe's Federal Plaza. The Federal Plaza is highly ordered by the architecture and systems of security. The Miesian grid, as people call it, dictates everything from pavers to the facade and also the security bollards. The South Shore Drill Team is a youth organization for kids in marginalized communities where they train them with precise routines, combining military movements with street choreography. And this structured program is a way to keep the kids away from trouble. These are kids who are typically unwelcomed in spaces of government and architectural prestige, but during this performance, they kind of own the space. So I became really interested in this idea of how the two systems of order can be superimposed. You can attempt to invert and activate some of these really formal grids and arrangements and engage them in a new light. And by doing this, it can kind of confront some of the political and architectural ideas behind something like the Federal Plaza. The project of typological cannibalism explicitly challenged the validity of existing types to generate new urban composites. While renovations often aim for respectful continuity with existing architecture, typological cannibalism contrasts old and new to foreground the need for typological revision. The next step was to establish your convictions and represent them in the form of architecture. You could basically do any kind of project that would represent your convictions. Oh, and you had to make a comic strip. I was still pretty unsure of what I wanted to do and what my conviction was at this point, but I did know that I wanted to do something that challenged the status quo. In architecture, the status quo could be represented by a typology. A typology is a building type that's become replicated over and over and over again to become recognizable by anyone across different cultures. And here's my conviction. In order to create sustainable lifestyles for the future, we must not only focus on creating efficient systems for conservation and consumption, but also aim to actively engage users in the understanding of urban ecologies. Seeing the city as a repository for cultural memory, I position ideas of sustainability through the densification of urban areas and creates new typologies amongst existing structures. The method of typological cannibalism differs from adaptive reuse as it aims to shock users into noticing their new environments, leading to discomfort, awareness, and inspiration. This approach looks to deepen social interactions while turning the elusive idea of sustainability into tangible realities. By the way, I really hate how I was writing at this time. Did I mention that? It's so freaking convoluted and unnecessarily wordy and distanced and impersonal. And nobody talks like this, but this is the methodology in which we converse and construct systems of knowledge in the intellectual world of academia. No. If I were to reword this in a way that makes it accessible for everyone, it might go something like this. Sustainability is not only about creating physical systems for conservation of energy. It is the process of engaging users to understand and love their environment. The city is a complex organism full of memory and culture, and by working with existing structures, orders, and typologies, we can create new interactions, meanings, and memories. Typological cannibalism differs from adaptive reuse in that it guides users into noticing their new environments, leading to discomfort, self-awareness, and awareness of his or her surroundings, and hopefully inspiration. Sustainability starts at the level of the people. See how I'm making this a little bit more personal and a little less didactic? I always try to use the pronoun we. I think it creates a sense of community and us achieving this thing together. Also, I added the word hopefully because this is something we can propose, but we can't really enforce. And I think it kind of leaves things open-ended and open for conversation. And conversation's always good. But actually, maybe the best way to explain this concept is through my comic strip. So how do you translate that into architecture? So this is the stage where we possibly make the biggest leap from idea to design.